All right, everybody. My name is Tabby Fayez, and we're here to discuss about Match 24, introduction, do's and don'ts, and most everything that you would need. Today, I have with me Dr. Ahmed Chaudhry and Dr. Abbas Faruqi. All three of us are from the Rezier platform. So with that, I would like to tell you a little bit about both of them. Dr. Ahmed Chaudhry has his expertise in psychiatry. He's an incoming PGY1 for psychiatry. And Dr. Abbas Faruqi is an incoming PGY1 for internal medicine. With that, I would ask Dr. Chaudhry first to give us a brief introduction, and then we'll move to Dr. Faruqi.
Hello, everyone. So like Dr. Fayaz just mentioned, I was in your shoes just a few months ago. What has it even been a few months? I think it's been like 2 weeks. I don't even know. Time's flying. But so I know the struggles. We understand where you are and what it takes to be in this situation. I currently am here in Texas, and Dr. Abbas, Dr. Fayaz, and we do one-on-one mock interviews and do group interviews to prepare people for interviewing specifically, but we also help with the rest of the application process, which is why we're here today. I've been interviewing for over 10 years. I ran a business before going to medical school, so kind of have a pretty good expertise on that. Yeah, excited to get started. I'll pass it on to Dr. Faruqi.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Chaudhry. So, as you all know, my name is Abbas Faruqi. I'm from India, actually from a city called Lucknow, famous for food and its architectural style and everything. Anyway, I'm an incoming PGY1 for internal medicine. I have been interviewing people at Rezier. As Dr. Chaudhry said, I've been in your position. I know the stress which everyone goes through, all the candidates go through. I know how tiring this whole process is, and it really takes a toll on you, both mentally, emotionally, and even physically. So we do understand what you're going through, and we are here to try to make this process as simple and as easy for you as possible. I do have a background in public speaking, in debating. I've been debating since 2006. So I'm here to help you whatever way I can. Over to you, Dr. Fayaz.
Thank you so much, both doctors, for that. I will not bore you guys with my details. If you so wish to know them, they're on the website and on the presentation. With that, we'll go ahead and get started so we can make the most of our time. Now, guys, the presentation that I sent out earlier in the group chat and on Instagram is comprehensive. We will not be going through all of that. We want to focus today on just the application. But if you want to know tips and tricks for USCE, for research, for other aspects of this journey, please go through that presentation. So with that, we will have Dr. Chaudhry start us off. He will be speaking about first professionalism in medicine, which is a large topic, very important. And then he'll guide us all the way up to how to choose programs for your specialty. And then Dr. Faruqi will take us from there.
Okay, guys, so I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share the presentation. Can everybody see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up. Somebody. Yeah. Okay, good. I'm gonna go through each section, and then I'm gonna pause and see if Dr. Faruqi has anything to add as well, because we come from very different specialties and different backgrounds. So we might have different opinions and different input that we want to give. That being said, like I just kind of alluded to, there's no template. There's no kind of step-by-step road to success here, unfortunately, or fortunately. So you want to show your personality. So you might go about this in a different way. You might deviate a little bit from what we recommend, and that's fine. There's no template. Me and Dr. Abbas and Dr. Fayaz, all three of us come from different backgrounds. We did different methods. We use different ways in formulating our application, all three of us. And we found success regardless of what method we took. So just make sure you take everything that everyone tells you, not just from us, but from other resources as well, with a heavy grain of salt, right? Follow the rules, follow the legalities that these different bodies like ERAS, NRMP, and all these mandate. Do that, but still show personality. So before I begin with professionalism, I just want to say one thing that I have come across with a lot of applicants that I've spoken to in the last few, I guess, basically a year since we've been doing this. you guys, you're spending thousands of dollars on this process of applying to residency, applying, getting U.S. clinical experience, applying for visas and all this stuff, like literally thousands of dollars. When we buy a car or we buy a home, we read the fine print. We read all of the rules and regulations, right? We make sure we have a driver's license and all this stuff that we do before we go and purchase our car or home or whatever. So if we're here spending all this time and money and effort on this, basically our future, we should be reading the rules and regulations. IRAS, NRMP, AAMC, AMA, all these organizations, they have clearly on their websites all their rules, their regulations, what's legal, what's not, how to go about stuff. I really highly recommend that everybody goes on their own and does their own research and reads up on all these rules and regulations. You should not be comfortable dropping all this money on a process that you haven't read up on. This might sound kind of harsh and rude, but honestly, it's kind of ridiculous to me that people are okay by doing that. So what I'm trying to say is, do your own reading up, know what you're trying to do, getting yourself into, and then of course, go out and seek your questions and answers from people like us or other people that, offer these services. But yeah, I just wanted to preface with that. And okay, so let's get into this now, professionalism. So, if you're being approached, regardless of what industry you're in, you want to be approached by someone who's being respectful of you, who's being warm and cordial of your time and your role in whatever position you're in. So there's no better way to do that than, obviously dressing well is one thing in an interview situation, but also how you present yourself in written format. How are you formulating your emails? How are you formulating if you're texting a PD, for example, or WhatsApp message or whatever it is, you stay away from colloquial terms, hi, hey, buddy, bro, stuff like that. Obviously don't use those words and try to stay within a format. So for example, here, as Dr. Fayaz has put on the slide for us, you want to start with a greeting, dear Dr. So-and-so. Hello is fine too. Dear is more formal. Good morning, you can say that, you can not, you can leave that out, it's fine, but this is kind of the format you want to go with. You want to have paragraph form, you want to be concise, you want to be brief, and you want to be to the point. There's no need for fluff. There's no need for kind of long-winded introductions. Hope you're well. I hope you're doing great. I hope this email finds you well. I hope this message finds you well. Stuff like that is fine, but you don't want to go into like, I've seen people write like a whole line of just like wishing them well, which I see what they're trying to do, but you don't really need to do that. Title it appropriately. So in terms of your subject, make sure it's relevant to what you're saying. Oftentimes, for example, in an LOI situation, you can have your AAMC number there. Begin with the greeting, keep it concise and coherent, be to the point, and attach your professional profile. So there's different ways that people do this. Some people attach their CV. I have spoken to PDs who have told me they like when they receive CVs in LOIs or in kind of emails when you're looking for US clinical experience or whatever you're emailing them about. Some people prefer that. I know that Dr. Fayaz and other PDs as well, are big advocates of a timeline. So, you put a little timeline box and show what you've done all this time, kind of like your CV, but in like a graphical format. That works too. But it's generally a good idea to attach that in your first correspondence. And you don't want to attach it to every single email you send the same person. And then in the end, obviously you want to do, regards, kind regards, yours sincerely, something like that. Try to stay away from words like cheers or best, unless you kind of know them pretty well or you have a colloquial relationship with them. And then there's more options here on the link. Obviously, there's many places where you can do this, get resources on this. In fact, the OET, I'm sure a lot of us here studied and did the OET. The written format, they taught you how to do these letters, right? So it's kind of the same thing. And then with text, also a similar idea. Use spaces if necessary, that's fine. But one thing that's a pet peeve of mine personally, I don't know if Dr. Faruqi or Dr. Fayaz or anyone else agrees with me, is when people send like bullet points and they send like 10 messages in a row. I think it's better if you collect your thoughts and send it in one message. It looks more, I don't know, professional, I guess. But then again, that's just me. Some people are okay with getting multiple messages in a row.
I would agree with that. I think it gives a better picture if you send it as one big text, because if I have to read between the lines, like the different bullet points, I kind of lose track myself.
Yeah,
It's
that
really
too. And also we get so many, like we get inundated by messages. Like my inbox is a total dumpster fire. And if there's one person that's like ping, 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 and I'm getting like 20 pings from the same person, I'm less likely to reply to you because like I'm annoyed. Why is my phone ringing 20 times over one message, right? But that might just be
Yeah,
me.
don't just proofread what you've written. You don't want to make spelling mistakes. You don't want to make grammatical errors. You don't want to have extra spaces or no spaces where, proper spacing is required. You could just look at the chat. I'm sending one thing. You can clearly see a difference. You can either type like that, like hello, Dr. Fayaz, and have an extra space, or you could just, type properly. It makes a whole lot of difference. When I see the message with proper spacing, proper, there's a proper structure to it, it just looks good. The person just want to read your message. You really want to read it. Otherwise, if you see a message which is haphazard, which looks disorganized, you just don't want to read it. And you'll be messaging professionals who are so busy in their work. So you want to catch their attention. You want your message to be professional, and you want your message to be drafted properly.
There is also apps like Grammarly, for example. I'm a native English speaker. English is my first language, and I use Grammarly pretty much for 90% of the emails I send. Just double check it, make sure it sounds good. That's another tip as well that you can use. Okay, so verbal and conversational professionalism. This is another thing. Sometimes as IMGs, if English is not our first language, there might be a little bit of a barrier there, right? So the best way to, I think, address it, as Dr. Fayaz has put here, NPR radio honestly is great for that because they're always professional. Or, if you're not on the left politically, a lot of the politically right radio are fine as well. There's a lot of, watching movies can help you as well. Reading in general, I think is something that helps with professional verbal as well as, typed up and understanding. Again, this is something that practice makes perfect. If English is not your first language, practice with friends, family, whoever. In our mock group sessions, interviews that we do, those are good places as well to practice your English as well. Just make sure you're avoiding colloquial terms like, you don't want to address a PD with what's up, right? Okay, so now if Dr. Faruqi or Dr. Fayaz don't have anything to add to that part of it, I'm going to move on to the application itself.
all clear.
Okay.
All clear from my end too.
Great. So now let's get into the meat of everything. So we've broken up, if you've looked at the slides, you've seen it. We've broken up the sections into different parts of the application. I'm going to go up to the program section, and at the end of every section, I'm going to pause and see if Dr. Faruqi and Dr. Fayaz have anything to mention. Like I said, we come from different backgrounds. We might have different inputs and different advices. So ERS application, get familiar with the timeline. I am guilty of this error. I recently in one of the groups made an error on when the season ends, for example. So make sure you know what where you are and where in the timeline and when things are due, when things are happening, and make sure you start early. So although here it says the season begins on June 7th. Sure, the season begins on June 7th, but you should be starting now. Like you should be doing something towards this ERS 2024 season as we speak. In June the season starts, but in September when the applications are due, right? So before the applications are due, programs are going to be a lot more receptive to communication. As soon as that September 27th date arrives, the programs are embargoed. If you read the rules and regulations, like I mentioned earlier, programs are not allowed to do excessive communication with applicants. So even if a program director really wants to help you or talk to you, they're contractually obliged to not do it. So right now is a good time to develop relationships with programs. Reach out to mentors, reach out to people in your locality. If there's a program down the road from you, reach out to them. Hey, I'm in the area. I'm an applicant. I'm really interested in the program for XYZ reasons, and make sure they're thoughtful reasons. Reach out in that way. I'm kind of going on a tangent, but for now, the point of this slide here is to make sure you're familiar with the dates, familiar with what's due when, what's available when. For example, June 7th, the season opens, and June 28th is when you can buy tokens for IMGs. So you want to make sure you buy your tokens on time. Hypothetically, tokens can run out, but it's never happened, but hypothetically. So get your token on time, so you're ready to go and you can get started. As soon as your ERAS application website portal becomes available to you, open it up, start messing with it, start entering your stuff in your ERAS application. You don't have to have it due by the 27th, but if you start early, you can, things are cooking in your mind, you're currently doing experiences, you can add them as you go, that kind of thing. So just as a quick overview, ERAS season ends, so the current season will end on the 31st, the next season will start on the 7th. So as I said, you're still working on it as we speak right now. ECFMG will release tokens on 28th of June. Buy your tokens as fast as you can. Residency applicants may begin submitting applications on the 6th. So even though this is when you can start submitting applications, you can research programs before this, right? You can research programs right now. You can see people's classes right now. I would suggest researching your programs on your own. Don't rely on pre-made lists or other people's lists. Just because if you do your own research on your own, not only will you save money by applying to programs that are pertinent or relevant to you, but also when it comes time to interview or send LOIs, you are personally familiar with the program and you can make your LOI more personal. And then, you have that time period between where programs will start being able to review your applications. There's always a question every single year about if you submit early, will programs see early? They won't. So as long as you submit on the 27th before 9 a.m., so 8:59, everybody that submitted before you will have the same date show up on their application. So as long as you're before 9 a.m. on the 27th of September, you're considered on time, right? Now, you can still submit later. You can submit after I applied to a specialty and I submitted in October or something, and I was fine, right? So you can submit later if you need to. I would recommend making sure everything is in. If you are submitting early and things are missing, try to minimize what's missing. So if your ECMG certificate is missing, for example, sure, submit and then make sure it's in when it's in. But if you have like CK score, certificate, and like 2 other things missing, I would err on the side of submitting once everything is ready. Others might disagree, but that's my opinion on it. So that's the timeline. Now, again, like I mentioned earlier, these are the bodies that you need to get very, very familiar with. The ECFMG, the AAMC, the NRMP. Please read their fine print. Please read their websites thoroughly. Read their rules and regulations. Make sure you're familiar with everything. The amount of times I've had people ask me when they can email, what they can email, why aren't they replying, blah, blah, blah. Like all those things are very clearly laid out on these rules and regulations. So make sure you are familiar with them. So just a quick overview for the ECFMG, they verify your medical education. They speak directly with your medical schools. Some some schools participate. I can't remember the acronym, but with the online portal, some people are snail mail. So depending on what your school does, try to be on time. If your school is going to mail them physical copies of stuff, you want to make sure you're well in advance you're applying. This is where you register for step 1, step 2, the different pathways in OET. Try to get this in as early as possible. Obviously, step 2 is kind of a hurdle, but the pathways and the OET stuff, especially the OET, you can take OET pretty much whenever. There's no kind of guideline on when to take OET. So if you're ready for it, go for it. And then you get your certification. Now, for IMGs, if you have mediocre scores on step 1 and step 2, I would recommend applying with certification. Again, there's difference of opinion on this, but personally, I would recommend being certified and then applying for residency. Now, if you have stellar scores, sure, apply without it. But yeah, again, there's different opinion on this. Okay, AAMC. So again, make sure you're familiar with AAMC. You register for your MyRS applications. You prepare all of these little documents, right? I say little, but obviously they're pretty big deals. So your LORs, I would recommend having more than 4. Now, minimum is 3. right? But I would recommend having more than 4 because you're then able to play with what letters you give to certain programs. So for example, I had about 6 letters, and from my letters, some were from university programs, some were from private clinics, some were research-based, some were more clinical-based. And the reason I did that was because I assigned 4 different letters to different programs because I catered them to the program. So all of my university programs that I applied to got all my university letters and my research letters. All of my community programs got my, not so research related letters. You're able to play with it more. Now, if time is of the essence and you're on a time crunch, obviously you can, use your 3 or 4. But if you have the time, you have the liberty to have more than that, that's going to help you in the long run. CV and experiences, seek out professional help. There's a lot of exploitation, so be careful, but seek out people that know what they're talking about. Just because somebody or your first language is English, that doesn't mean you're an expert CV or experiences writer. English is my first language, and I sought out professional experience for my CV, and I totally recommend that for everybody. Everyone else is doing it. If you're not doing it, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. That's my opinion on that. Make sure your transcripts are ready to go from ECFMG. That's something that they do. It's not really much on your part. The personal statement is another thing. Like I said about the CV and experiences, write your own personal statements. I think that goes without saying. Don't have somebody else write it because people can tell the moment you start speaking, they're going to compare how your personal statement is, be like, this is clearly not the same person. So make sure you write your own personal statements, make them personal, but have someone review your grammar and stuff like that. Friends, people that know what they're talking about. Your profile picture, some people spend thousands of dollars on like professional studio photos. If you have the money, sure, go ahead, do it, but you really don't need to do it. As long as your photo looks clear, you look professional, clean, groomed, you're fine. Plain background, it all works.
I would like to add something to that. Sorry for cutting you off, but just to let people know, I don't know about you, Dr. Chaudhary or Dr. Faruqi. I did not go to a studio to get my picture. I took mine at home with a camera that we had. So we had to obviously make it look good, but all you need is a white background. We were kind of not sure what to do, so we just took a white, like a sheet, and we just stuck it on the wall. We flattened it out and we took our picture right then and there. So if you feel like that's something that you want to save your money on, you can also just do this. That's all.
I absolutely agree with that. I know many, like portrait mode on the iPhone is actually amazing. It can make you look great, like studio quality. I did do professional photos, but I didn't go to a studio. I just literally had someone I knew who was a professional photographer take a picture of me in front of a building. Like I didn't even have a white background. So I had just had it blurred. So anyway, you can, there's flexibility. As long as you look presentable, you're dressed professionally, you're fine. Okay, and then the program list. So I kind of alluded to this earlier. Make sure you do your own research on programs. I cannot emphasize this enough. The amount of people that have asked me, can you send me your program list, send me your program list. It's not, my program list is not relevant to you. I have my own requirements, my family, my geographical preference, my scores, my application, what my preferences to programs are, where I would like to train. So my list will be very different from somebody else's list. Make your own list, guys. Research your own programs. If you start now, you have more than enough time. If you're applying to 200 programs, research 2 to 3 programs a day. It'll take you less than 30 minutes, literally. You can do it while having breakfast every day. Make your little notes, make an Excel sheet, and by the end of 2-3 months, you have your list. And that way you kind of are able to speak to your experiences with that program more personally in an interview, in an LOI, and then if you're personalizing your personal statement, which I think we'll get into later, but if you're personalizing your personal statement to each program, you can be more insightful and more detailed if you are familiar with the program. And you're not going to be familiar if you don't do your own research on the program. Okay, the NRMP, this is kind of, you can register for it early on as well, but the deadline I think is like January something. So you can register for it during the cycle as well. I think I would recommend registering for it early so you can have the NRMP ID on your ERS application from day 1. Just because it's one last thing to worry about. You never know. Someone might look at it and say, oh, this guy looks like they have their ducks in a row. So try to have it early. I think it's like $79 to $89 or something like that. So make sure you have that. And this is again for later. This is after you get your interview and you're formulating your rank list. That's going to be an NRMP, and that's how you also participate in SOAP if you have to. Okay. Now the next thing is ECF. So, okay, I didn't know we had detailed slides. Dr. Fayaz, so impressive. Okay, so I guess we talked about a lot of these things. What did I miss? So make an account. This is a kind of a step-by-step. I encourage you to go through the slideshow as well. This is a step-by-step on how to do it. I won't bore you guys with details of that right now. Just make sure you do it well in advance, especially if your program does not, or if your medical school does not participate in the ECFMG portal, because then it can take a while, especially if you're overseas. And then learn about the fees, right? Learn about, this is a hyperlink. You can click on it and you can go directly to the ECFMG fees as well. Okay, so same thing with My ERAS. There are tools and worksheets for applicants. I encourage you, like I said earlier, to go through the websites for each of these governing bodies and make sure you're familiar with everything. The residency user guide is actually really helpful. The checklist is great as well. There's a checklist built into ERAS as well, so you can use it there too. The supplemental ERAS, this is very specialty specific. We're going to get into it a little later as well. Some specialties participate, some don't. There's a lot of nuance there. I have like a personal grudge with it, just because none of my Signal programs sent me invites except for one. But whatever, right? So it is what it is. The NRMP, like I said earlier, you register for the match itself. It's later, but you try to get it earlier. And that's where you make your rank order and it's supplemental, or the SOAP process as well. So email communication, consider allocating a unique email address to all residency related correspondence. I highly recommend this. I did not do this, but I highly recommend it, and I regretted it as soon as interviews started coming in. It was stressful, because you want to turn your notifications off for all emails except for one, because otherwise you're going to get notified for like every single email you get. And honestly, don't do that to yourself. I regret doing that. So I recommend everyone make a different email address that you use for residency. So for your residency application, for ERAS, for NRMP, for all this stuff. That way, when the cycle starts, your notifications are on only for one email, and you're not getting pinged all the time for other stuff. And again, you register that email with your My ERAS, your NRMP, your residency programs. If you're tech savvy, you can, there's ways to make sure you only get notified by certain email addresses. But again, like I said, you never know who's going to email you. A program might email you from a private email or from an organizational email that's not on your approved list. So you want to make sure you have a separate email for this whole process. For residency related communication, like I said, for the interview notification, you kind of use that one email. Okay, so the application itself. Before I go on to this, Dr. Faruqi or Dr. Fayaz, any input on the things that we just talked about?
I will certainly encourage Dr. Faruqi to go first, and then we'll go from there.
Right. All clear from my end.
All right. Dr. Chaudhary, I believe it's a great time to take some of the questions. We have cleared most of the chat questions. So if anybody would like to turn their mic on and I have any questions from what we have already discussed, and then we'll move forward from there. I believe that silence.
I have a question actually.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, my name is Rami. I have a question regarding researching the program. So when you said that we have to research the program, so should we look for people who are resident and have a similar background as us, or what we should look exactly?
So even on this, there's like people have different opinions on it. Personally, what my strategy was, I focused on regions that I knew that I was okay to be in personally and in terms of my family. And then I looked at residents that are in the program. So for example, I applied to maybe 10 programs that did not have any IMGs. The reason I did that was because there were aspirational programs. There were programs that I would have loved to train in, but I knew I didn't really have a shot, but I didn't want to regret later, like, hey, what if it worked out, right? So I applied to 10. I limited myself to 10, which were like very aspirational programs. None of them were Ivy League, by the way. Then I focused most of my program list on programs that had at least one IMG in one of the 4 years. So psychiatry is 4 years. So in one of the 4 years, if they had one IMG and I liked the program, the rest of what was happening there, the geographical region, what their didactics were like, what their schedule was like, what their overall vibe was, that I applied there. So I added it to my list. So the criteria is unique to whatever you prefer. If you're strapped for cash, which I understand a lot of IMGs are, I would recommend applying to programs that have like a good number of IMGs, right? Like a larger than 50% IMG population in their residents. That's a safe bet, right? They're going to look at your application. So that's how I would cater it. You know, it's really up to you, to be honest. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very much.
I have a question.
Sure.
Okay, hi. My name is Ijoma. I was just going to ask about the tele-rotation. What are you going to talk about it, or what do you advise? Do we go there in person, or we can do it online? And that's for the US clinical experience.
So I don't think we talk about that today,
I
but I
will
can answer
help.
that question. Do we?
So
I can talk about tele rotations because I did a few tele rotations myself.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
So we
Go
have
ahead, Dr. Khan.
slides on the US clinical experience. Like I mentioned earlier, we're not talking about everything. So if you just guide yourself a few slides over to that section, we speak about the hierarchy. But that's something to read. Since we have Drs. Faruqi and Dr. Chaudhry willing to speak, please go ahead.
All right, so tele rotations were in fashion during the COVID times because understandably people were not able to travel to the US because of travel restrictions and so many other things. But now the world has opened up again, and obviously in-person, on-hands clinical experience can never be matched by tele-rotation. So by chance, let's say, for example, if you're not able to go to the United States, if you're not able to get some hands-on US clinical experience, tele-rotation could be your last option. That's what I would say. But nothing can beat hands-on clinical rotation in person. If you're getting good tele-rotations, good. But then if you can come to the US and get some hands-on clinical experience, that's a lot better.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would agree with that.
Hi, my name is Surafa. I do have a question. It might be a primitive regarding searching the programs. We just like Google the programs around us, or there is a website that we can like access to find the programs.
You can
Like,
Google the
we
programs.
prefer-
You can Google the programs. You can look on Frida. That's a website you can use. And you can also, if you have an AAMC ID, you have access to Residency Explorer. That's the one that I would recommend. If you don't have an ERAS, my ERAS, like if you didn't participate in previous match cycles, you might not have a profile, then you could use Frida and Google. But if you have my ERAS, you have access to Residency Explorer. It's totally free.
Okay, thank you so much.
Don't pay for services for this stuff. I know I'm not going to name things because the session is being recorded.
Yeah,
but
I know many companies. Yeah.
yes,
I don't-
please don't pay because it's all free. It's out there for you to do your own research anyway. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for your advice.
Hello. So I have a question. How do we approach the program editors? Like sometimes it don't like it, especially if we are directly approaching them. And how do we create a positive impression on them and lessly a negative approach? Like how do we approach them in the best possible way?
I would say email. Like we talked about earlier, in a professional, concise email, express your interest, maybe say why you're interested. Say that you want to apply and you want to get a better feel of the program and you would love to get some sort of clinical experience there or whatever. They might have something going on, a research project or whatever it is. That would be the best way to do it, I would say. You know, when I was applying and the year prior to when I was applying, I sent hundreds of emails to many programs. And honestly, it's a numbers game. A lot of them are not going to reply to you or, even acknowledge you. But the ones that do are going to, it's going to work out and helpful in your way. You're not going to know until you start trying to find out. Just make sure you're doing it in a professional way and you're being concise. You're not sending like a 2-page email on something.
Yeah, so we start now?
You can, yeah, absolutely. Right now is the best time. Well, you can start now, but what I'm trying to say is once they are done with onboarding of the residents and whatnot, that would kind of be a better time, I would say, maybe in like a month or two from now. However, you can start now for sure. You can express your interest and say you're interested and you want to get some clinical experience there.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. And with that,
I am Tej.
go ahead.
I have one question. How can I find which program is IMG friendly and which program is not?
So when you're researching your programs, you'll see their resident class. I think something like 99% of programs have their residents listed on their web pages. If you see a bunch of IMGs on their current roster of residents, they're IMG friendly. That would be the best gauge of doing it. There's really no like grading criteria of IMG friendliness other than just trying to see if other IMGs are there.
Thank you.
One question, if I don't mind. What's your recommendation for the CV and experience writing, and also the personal statement? And do you guys offer any assistance with that? Thank you.
So as it stands, we don't have a professional service set up. We are working on something. There's something in the works. As it stands, we don't. However, we're not going to recommend other companies just on this platform at the moment. However, if you seek out, like, it doesn't, like, I would obviously a USMLE oriented service would be best, but you really don't need to do that. It could be anyone that knows how to formulate a CV, a professional that's been doing it for a while, like a recruiter, a headhunter, someone like that. It's all about how you structure your experiences. That is something that, it's kind of like a skill that people have.
So will you be able to have the one for you guys ready by this season, or I don't think so?
Dr. Fayaz, person to ask for that.
So that has certainly been something we are thinking about. But guys, while we're working on that, what we do want to do is do more sessions on how to formulate your CV and what you should include in it. If you're not able to attend those, then the actual AAMC, the company or the institution that generates my ERAS, they have tips on how to write your CV. So we're in fact going to cover that just a few slides down from now. But like you said, you asked if you do need more careful consideration of your CV, then certainly we will be announcing that. We try as much as possible to give you guys the tools to do things on your own so that you don't fall in the trap of spending a lot of money on this. Interview skills are something that you do need someone to point out to you. So we offer that. If that is something that people are interested in, then we will certainly try to offer that. But going back to when you see the slides later on CV, on our CV slides, go to the original website, which is free for all, the MyERAS website. Look at the suggestions they have. Briefly, they talk about discuss your skills that you learned in that experience. Also use numbers. We're very number people. So if you tell me 10,000 patients versus a patient, that makes a huge difference.
Definitely.
So that would be,
Thank you.
we'll definitely announce it, but we want to hand you guys all the tools so you can do it yourself.
Okay, so let's jump back into this, Dr. Fayaz.
Yes.
Okay, so the application cost, I'm not going to sit here and list all these things. You can look them up. They're right here as well. just it's a big, like I said earlier, this is a big financial burden. Make sure you know what you're doing, where you're applying, research all the programs, and read the regulations before you start spending all this money. It's thousands of dollars, like as you can see. Okay. The one thing I'll say about this is the MSPE is kind of a, some schools do it, some do it in a different way. It is a standard thing that they require. So if your school is not familiar with what an MSPE is, I've had this before, so that's why I'm mentioning it. If your school has never sent an MSPE to ECFMG before, there is a guideline that ECFMG will provide you. So if you ask them, they'll send you like a template, and you can send that to the school, or sometimes even they do it directly with the school. So just something to keep in mind. Everything else there we kind of talked about. There's a calculator here that you can use. I think it's an Excel sheet. You can punch in how many programs you're applying to in specialties, and it'll give you what your estimated cost is going to be. But yeah, 5,000 to 11,000 is kind of what I've heard people spending. Okay, so there are new changes coming to 2024 cycle. So I personally think that these are going to be really good changes, because it's going to be able to show not only more personality, but something that can provide more interest to an area, especially, for example, the geographical stuff, right? That's going to help you a lot, especially if you're already in an area that has a lot of programs where other IMGs have matched or are in specialties that you're interested in. So this is going to be a place where you can show that interest. So for example, right now, we can kind of run through these a little bit. We're not going to go into too much detail again, but we'll run through some of these just in the interest of time. So currently, your number of experiences are undefined, but now you can only put 10. I think this is a good change, because previously there was room for bias, right? If a PD saw 2 different applications and one had like 15 experiences, one had 3, they might look at the 15 as more preferable. So I think this is a good change. This is a good kind of standardized way of making sure everyone is kind of on the same playing field. So, that's one thing. People have different opinions on that. Now, in terms of enabling applicants to self-select their top 3 most meaningful experiences, this would move the experiences to the top of your CV. So you're kind of able to star them in a way. This is another thing that kind of shows, for example, if you're applying to, I'm going to give the example of psychiatry because that's my specialty, but if you are applying to psychiatry and let's say you have like 10 experiences, 9 of them are psych and one of them is kind of something else related, but out of those 9, you want to highlight some that are very relevant to this field or very relevant to your specific interests. You can highlight those. So then the next one is collects more descriptive information about your experiences, such as your position, organization, time frame. I think currently it was very ambiguous, so this is going to help you as well in highlighting what your exact role was, and the frequency. So right now I think it was just the hours per week, which was not really relevant, for example, to volunteers if you only volunteered once a week or once a month or once a quarter. So defining your experiences, whether it's a volunteer, work, professional, or a hobby. So this is helpful for IMGs as well, because a lot of times as IMGs, we were putting our experiences, our clinical experiences in our work experiences. So some of them might have been volunteers, some of them might have been paid, some of them might have been research. So you can kind of now tier them. Offers additional multiple entry questions to capture mission focused characteristics of each experience entry focus area. So this is actually a good way to delineate your experiences as well, especially if you're catering your application to a specific type of practice. So like, for example, rural or urban or whatever other kind of classification you're trying to go for. And then descriptions focus on critical information for program roles, responsibilities, and context for all experience entries. So you can kind of be more detailed and specific in how you are going to describe your experience. So, these are welcome changes. Make sure you read up on them, like I said earlier, so you can better, describe your experience on your CV and start early, because this is going to be a lot more detailed now, right, than it was in previous years. So you want to start early and make sure you collect your thoughts, and you're able to kind of portray your experience in a good manner. Same with the geographical changes. I won't go into detail here. They're just kind of talking about how you're able to kind of be more standardized in how you are describing your location specific information. Okay. So make sure you go to the official sources. Don't rely on third parties unless after you've gone to the official sources. We have a timeline on the ResEA website as well that you kind of saw earlier on the slideshow as well. Before we go to CV, any input, Dr. Faruqi, on what we just talked about?
All good, all clear from my end.
Dr. Fayaz, you good?
So Dr. Chaudhry, what I was wondering is if you could show us a glimpse of that timeline on our website.
It was this one, right?
Oh, we have more. So if we click that link
right.
that's on your actual slide, if you go for the slide that you just presented.
I'm sorry, where is it?
You're right. This is a maze. There's a lot of slides.
There it is.
Yes, if we click on that ResEA one, and then if we scroll down to the detailed area, so this is a brief overview. Now, and then we can just focus here. For a lot of us who are asking, we encourage you to start early. So how early? What exactly should I be doing? We will not read this to you, but this link is in the presentation, as you saw, and this walks you through everything that you should be focusing on. If you're in the process right now where you're gaining U.S. clinical experience, or you will be because you want to get it on your CV, then this also walks you through, okay, what is it that you can prepare? I wanted to just show you the actual web page. So there's details of every single month and what you could do leading all the way up to the end of the season, including SOAP, rank order list, and all of those. So that would be it. Thank you.
Yes, and this is very comprehensive, guys. There's links embedded within to take you directly to different sources as well. Okay, let me go back to my show here. Okay. So let's moving on to the CV here. So this is the actual CV itself. So like I said earlier, we're going to be doing sessions later on as well on the CV specifically. But for now, we'll do a quick overview. And I encourage you to start early, like we said. Organize your thoughts, especially on the experiences that you've already done. Make sure they're presented in a nice, concise way. Some people say to use bullet points. Some people say to use paragraph form. I did paragraph form, but I didn't do it in full sentences. And in fact, I had one interviewer that kind of was like, hey, this is kind of unique and I like it. I like the way you did it. So, it depends on your preference. Either or kind of works. Just make sure you're using very descriptive terms. And like Dr. Fayaz said, you use numbers. So for example, I've done quite a bit of ECT in some of my psych experiences. And instead of just saying, extensive ECT or whatever, I actually wrote the number of ECTs that I've done. So that's kind of one way to do it. So my ERAS CV, this is the CV that's used on ERAS. When you download it as a PDF, it's very clunky and weird, but unfortunately that's what they use. Also, as a kind of sort of relevant side note, we don't recommend using your ERAS CV to apply for observerships or for rotations or anything like that. The reason why we don't recommend that is because if you have an ERAS CV, you probably applied for a match. And if you're applying for an observership, you probably went unmatched, right? So that can lead to some bias in people reviewing. Unfortunately, that's the nature of it is. That's what it is. We don't recommend it. Have people gotten observerships and experiences using the ERAS CV? Absolutely, they have. So, if you're doing it, it's fine, I guess, but we don't recommend it generally speaking. Also, it's not a great CV. It looks very clunky and haphazard. You can formulate a better one on Microsoft Word, way better on your own. Like Dr. Fayaz said, the AAMC does have guidelines and their sample CV is actually really good. And that's the one that I used before applying for match this cycle. Okay, so the template, so this is, like I said, it creates the fields for you. Prepare it early, make sure you're, even now getting ready and formulating your thoughts so that when you're doing the actual CV, you can just copy paste it into the portal itself. Okay, we talked about this. Now, the personal CV, again, like I said, use it for getting clinical experiences, for getting research positions, for any mentorship requests. If you're emailing programs now to show interest or to get experiences, use your personal CV for that. This is the template that I was talking about. If you click on here through the slideshow, it'll take you directly to it. And then these are the tips that we mentioned earlier. How am I doing on time, Dr. Fayaz?
I think we could certainly try to go through some
Faster?
less detail so we can take more questions.
Okay,
But you're doing a
okay. So
wonderful job.
okay, I'll try to go a little quicker, and we can always address questions as well. So now, like I said, they changed it up to 10 experiences now. These are the kind of tiers experiences that you have. Also, under research, it's not a separate experience, but you can classify research as non-published, and then in that you can type about a research role. So that's another way to do it. These are the kind of tiers that they have currently under the research. Meaningful experiences. This is your supplemental application. No, this is not supplemental, right?
This
No,
is
it's not.
the top 3 experiences.
Right. So this is the new thing that they've added, where you highlight the 3 experiences that you have. Here you can talk about how that experience influenced you. This is a good place to use some of those tactics that we use in our interviews. What kind of skills did you learn? Maybe it made you more resilient. Maybe it made you, this is the reason why you went into that specialty, something like that. Just be careful when you're formulating this. I know that some of us as IMGs and even non-IMGs, we apply to multiple specialties. So just be careful, be aware of that if you are doing that, what you're saying in this section. Impactful experiences. This is kind of something that is non-academic, more on a personal level. This was previously actually in the supplemental applications as well. So, another place to show some personality. This is actually great for people that are struggling to make their personal statement concise. So the general recommendation is to make your personal statement within a page to page and a half. If your personal statement is 2.5 pages and you're struggling to shorten it, here's a great way to kind of supplement your personal statement by having your impactful experiences mentioned here. Any input on that section, Dr. Faruqi, before I move on?
All good from my end, Dr. Chaudhary.
Absolutely.
Okay, documents. So these are we kind of touched on earlier, your LORs, your transcripts, your graduate certificate, your ECFMG certificate, your MSPE, all these things. This is pretty self-explanatory. I would recommend you reading up on this on your own as well. The only thing I will say, I kind of touched on it earlier as well, try to have as many LORs as you can. I know the minimum is 3 or 4. Try to have a little more that are varied so that you can, instead of just sending everyone the same LOR, you're able to kind of cater it more. Also, if you're applying to multiple specialties, I would recommend having multiple LORs for those as well. I won't get into what makes a good or a bad LOR right now, but there's criteria on that as well that I would recommend you reading up on. Example, we have in this slide showing, in fact, we have examples of a good LOR and a bad LOR. Okay, so here is specialties participating in residency. I won't spend time on this. If you're applying to a certain specialty, I'm sure you're already aware of that. Okay, so competitiveness. This is important to be aware of. I get a lot of questions on this from applicants that are looking to apply psychiatry, just because psychiatry in the last few years has gotten very, very competitive, and the numbers show it. So make sure you're aware of how competitive your specialty has been in historical years, and be aware of what's happening in generally the world, right? So for example, Roe v. Wade just got overturned. That influenced OB residency. It influenced the number of applications. It influenced the number of massed applicants. So same thing with emergency medicine. There's stuff going on with the number of emergency medicine residencies opening up that's causing a saturation in the market. So people aren't applying, especially AMGs. So, there's different nuances there that you should be aware of. But I'm going on a tangent. Like I said, NRMP is your source you want to focus on. This can give you an idea of what is competitive, what is not, and that will ultimately cater your decision as to whether you're applying to one specialty or you're applying to multiple specialties. Just make sure they're trying kind of adjacent, that you can explain in a interview or on your CV. Any input on that section, Dr. Faruqi?
All good, all good.
I do believe we had a couple of questions. I saw some hands raised.
Sure.
If you would like to ask your question now.
Radhika, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. So my question is it a good idea to apply to those programs who interviewed you but did not rank you?
Yes, definitely is. It shows that you are really interested in the program, and it shows that your interest is long-standing. And if you have spent this time improving your application, which we hope you have, you've gotten more experiences, maybe you got step 3 done or whatever you've added to your CV. If they remember you, they'll see that, right? Sometimes it's often the case that if you didn't get an interview from there, they might have not even seen your application. I didn't mention this earlier, but I encourage everybody, make sure on your ERAS CVs, every single section has something in it. Programs can make their own filters. So this is a common thing that people don't know. Programs can make their own filters, and they can make their filter whatever it is, whatever they want it to be. So they can make a filter, for example, if you're, exclude everybody that is missing this one section on ERAS, like accomplishments or something. Make sure you have something on every ERAS section. So Radhika, to answer your question, yes, apply to the program you've applied to before, for sure.
So my linking question is, in our letter of interest, should we mention that we interviewed with you last season? Like, is it worth mentioning?
That's a tricky one. Personally, I wouldn't. I don't know if Dr. Faruqi or Dr. Fayaz agree with me. I wouldn't personally do that. But if you had a really memorable experience with an interviewer, with a program director, or with somebody at the program, it might be worth doing it. What do you guys think, Dr. Faruqi?
I think you can mention it. I mean, it would only remind them that, yes, you did interview, you were shortlisted for an interview, and it's just that you did not match in that particular program. So you never know, it might work in your favor. I wouldn't put a lot of emphasis on it, just drop a line or so. If you had a really good interview, then yeah, you could write like you had a really nice interview and all that stuff. But then do mention it somewhere and then focus on, your current interest and how you worked on your application and other things which you want to mention.
So my opinion would be on the side of caution. This comes from a program chair. He had mentioned that it also depends on how many times you've applied. He had mentioned that if you've applied several times and that you were not matched, and if you do remind a program of that, immediately they would get a little bit sensitive about it and say, okay, well, if you didn't go match so many cycles, why should we invest in you now? So we don't want you to disclose your personal information on here, but keep that in the back of your mind. If you have applied several times, that is something you'd want to consider.
Okay, so if I just applied once and this is my second year matching, I can just mention it over there.
Again, like Dr. Chaudhary and Dr. Faruqi mentioned, if you had a very memorable experience, then certainly you should mention it. If you don't fall in that category, then focus more on why you want to interview there. Talk more about the program and your interest. People like listening about their program. So if you said in a genuine way, I think that would spark more interest in you as a candidate.
Gotcha. Thank you so much.
Of course. We'll take one more question from Sophia.
Hi, everyone. My question is, when reapplying, what documents can we use from the previous application? Like MSPs or LORs, can we just directly transfer them, or do we need to approach our preceptors again and ask them to upload?
So that is built into the presentation. If you look a few slides down, it actually takes you to a straight link to ERAS that walks you through which documents you can transfer over.
Okay, so only those documents which are mentioned there?
It's the
I think it's on slide 55.
Go ahead, Abbas.
I think it's on slide 55.
Yeah, I checked that, but I think LOR and MSP was not mentioned. That's why.
So what happens is you cannot reuse your LOR in the sense from the system. You can send the request, and if they've already have your LOR, then they'll have to upload it again.
Okay.
I will say though that sometimes a mentor or a letter writer will be okay with updating the date on their letter and re-uploading it just because it looks more updated. It's, you know, like a newer letter. So it might be worth exploring that option as well.
Oh yeah, I get that. I have another question. So is it important to waive the right to see the LOR, or is it okay if we can view it?
I don't know about Dr. Farooq and Dr. Fayaz. I strongly recommend waiving your right to read it.
Yep, I recommend the same.
Same.
Okay, thank you. Because I was going through our WhatsApp chat, and some of them mentioned that some LORs were not good. So that's why, like, is it okay if one LOR, if I can, not waive the right to just I have an idea what the LOR is about?
I still wouldn't recommend.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it.
Here's
Okay,
the
got it.
reason. And Dr. Chaudhary actually explained this in a previous session. For example, if you do not waive the right, so someone's asking, what is the question? When you submit your LOR, you have one of two options. Either waive your right to see the letter, meaning you have not seen it, or do not waive your right, meaning you will see the letter and so will the PDs, the programs you apply to. If you do not waive the right, that kind of says indirectly, I don't really trust my letter writer and I'm not okay with what they wrote. I want to see it as well. This is why we suggest that you waive the right to see your letter. I hope that.
I see, got it. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Mhm.
We can take the Toro's question. They've been had their hand raised.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhary, and thank you to all the presenters as well. Can you hear me well, by the way?
Yep.
Okay, all right, so I have two questions. So last application, I put my age. So I just wanted to, I would like to ask, is it a good thing to disclose your age to programs, or would you advise against doing that? Then, okay, yeah, I'll let you answer, then I have one more question.
I think your age, I think your year of graduation is probably more important than your age. So I don't think it should hurt you at all. Like I'll give you my example. I'm older than the average residency applicant. But my year of graduation is more recent. I went to med school later in life. I think you should be okay by disclosing your age. I don't think that should be a problem. I think it's very like PD, like program directors are not a monolith, right? It's not like they all have the same brain that they think the same. Some people would prefer someone who is a little older. Some people might prefer someone who's younger, right? It's also specialty specific. So I don't personally, I think it's fine to disclose your age.
Okay.
But I don't think it's a huge kind of deal. Like it's not going to make or break your application if your age is showing or not, I think.
Okay. And again, you even mentioned that we should try to fill in all the sections. So you
Yes.
just never know, rather than let it be blank. Okay, thank you. The second question is regarding applying to two different specialties. So if you have 2 or 3 programs in your area and they are not very far from each other, they're not very far from themselves, like just short distance between all of them, but you are, I'm applying for like different specialties. Is it a good idea, or is there a chance that somebody may know somebody in the other program? Yeah.
So you're saying they're different specialties?
Yeah, so like there is let's say programs A, B, C, right? In your around where you live, right? But you want to apply to FM, psychiatry, and pediatrics in each of them, but they are very close in terms of their location. So could that be a problem?
So
maybe?
if they're in the same institution, like same sponsoring institution, then it's possible that they know each other and they talk. There is even some places, I know like one program in Florida is like that, where there's a psych and a family program and they both have one coordinator, for example. There's programs like
Wow.
that. So,
Okay.
however, if it's a different sponsoring institution, you're less likely to have people know each other. But you know,
Okay.
geography can influence. They might know each other.
Yeah.
Personally, if it's a different program, I think personally that it's okay. If it's the same program, I wouldn't do that.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. Thank you very much.
No problem.
So we'll take Mohammed's question and then we'll go ahead with the presentation.
Hi, Dr. Fayaz and Dr. Chaudhry and Dr. Faruqi. Hope everyone's doing good. So I just had a couple of questions regarding the ERAS 2024 application changes. So as we just saw a few slides ago that now they've restricted our application to like 10 experiences. So my question was like, I feel like this is sort of a disadvantage to older graduates. I mean, because considering like if you take my example, so I graduated in 2017, and since 2017 up till now, I've had some experience. I've had like quite a lot of experiences that sort of also define my personality and also like fill those gaps. But now that they've restricted 10 experiences, 10 including volunteer and hobby and research experience. So that kind of, I mean, now we have to like choose which we want to show, and we'll have to like remove the rest of the experiences from our CV. So what's your suggestion on how we should approach that? Should I focus on more of my recent experiences, or more of those experiences that are like more related to the specialty I'm applying to? Or I mean, so this is kind of a thing that's been bothering me for the new 2024 changes in the application. Yep. So yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Briefly, I will mention one correction. These 10 experiences do not include your research experience. As you can see, that is not on the slide. They have allowed a whole separate section for peer-reviewed, poster, oral, and non-peer reviewed research.
So my question was, yeah, I understand that research. So I went through this workbook on the website. So I think it looks like the other section is for publications, research publications, like whatever the publications are. But sometimes we have research work experience as well, where we don't get any publications out of those experiences. We're working with a principal investigator at a hospital, but there's not many publications out of those experiences. So what about those experiences?
So let me give you my input on this. So I had I can't remember how many I had, but I had a lot of experiences to add to my CV, and I purposefully made my CV shorter than the experiences that I had. Now, the reason I did that was because I didn't want my CV to be like 20 pages. I didn't want programs to have to sift through a whole book just to read my experiences. So here's what I did. I did my most recent experiences on the top. And then in one of the entries at the the last one chronologically, I just put a title. I think I put something about like various clinical experience, something like that. And I just bullet pointed the experiences in a row within the description. So that's one way where you can go around this. I actually had one of my interviewers who said that this is a great idea. It was at a smaller program, but he looked at it and he said, wow, I never seen this before. This is a good idea. So that's one way you can kind of avoid that for your specific cause. Now, whether you mentioned that if you want to put them in chronological order, that's one way to do it. You can just mention your top most recent 9, and then have your 10th one be kind of a small bullet point of all of the rest of them. Or you can put the ones that are most relevant to your field that you're applying to. So if you're applying to internal medicine, but you might have some experience from somewhere else, you know, keep your internal medicine ones on top and then have one where you have multiple ones. You could do that. The other thing I was going to say for your specific situation is you could also use the meaningful experiences section to talk about how you've done all this other stuff that you're not able to list. However, it meant a lot to you for XYZ reason.
All right, perfect.
So
So
these two sections you can utilize, impactful and meaningful experience section.
I think for the meaningful, we have to select 3 out of those 10 experiences. So probably we'll have to, but yeah, I get it. This is a really good idea that if we could like combine 3-4 similar experiences into one, that would be, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, and that's something that I did on the current cycle, just because I didn't want my CV to be too long. So now they're kind of forcing your CV to not be long.
Yeah, all right. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhary. That was my question. Yep.
No problem. Okay, remind me, Dr. Faruqi, are you taking programs or am I still on this section?
I'm taking over from program signaling.
Okay, so I'll do this one. All right, guys. So let's move on to this. Dr. Fayaz, are we okay?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, programs. So like I said earlier, make sure you research your programs. This is a very kind of shallow overview. Categorical programs, prelim/advanced, and then transitional. There are differences of opinion on, for example, when you're soaping into a program, or if you're applying to a supplemental program that doesn't require a prelim. Generally, in those circumstances, a TY year is preferred. However, if you're applying to things like radiology or anesthesia or something, then you need the TY year. So just make sure you're familiar with what is specific to your specialty. So if you're applying to internal medicine, you already should know that a categorical program is just a categorical internal medicine program. There might be a prelim IM that they exist. There's prelim surgery that you can apply to as well. But obviously the preference should be categorical. So last cycle, I got this questions from people when it came to rank time. They wanted to know if they should rank their categorical programs above their prelim programs or their prelim over their categorical. If you're applying to a specialty that does not require a prelim year, such as IM, PEDS, FM, Psych, then I would recommend personally to rank your categorical programs first, because like we're not getting into this here, but the algorithm, the rank algorithm is applicant preferring. So it's going to go through your list before it tries to match you with the program where the program matches you. So if you have ranked a prelim year above a categorical, you might end up matching at a prelim and foregoing the opportunity of a categorical where you might have actually matched. So always rank your categoricals first. Okay, moving on. When applying, keep in mind that the same program may offer different types of tracks. So make sure you are familiar with keeping a careful eye on the NRMP number of the program you're applying to. You don't want to apply to you don't want to rank the wrong program on top of the other, for example. Searching for programs, we talked about this earlier already, so I won't harp too much on it. Residency Explorer is the one that I use. It's the one that I recommend. Frida's great too. I just didn't like the way it was set up, so I preferred Residency Explorer, but they're both good. People will give you varying opinions and they'll swear by their opinions as to what is more accurate than the other. I'm not going to get into that debate, but I liked Residency Explorer. Like I said earlier, please don't pay for a list of programs. There's really no need for you to do that. Make sure you research your own programs and do it this way. Also Google, just geographically, you can just type in, family medicine residency, and then the name of the city. It'll give you all the programs in that city. You can do that too. Okay, factors to consider when you're selecting your program. So your program criteria, again, this is usually a guideline. So, and also sometimes programs don't update their websites, especially smaller programs, they might not update it. I have heard of programs that say on their website, we don't sponsor visas, and then they sponsor visas. That's happened, and vice versa. So make sure you research your programs. If you're reaching out, you can clarify on these things and ask. If you see that a program says non-visa sponsoring, but then you see on their residence list, they have like 20 people from a country that is not in North America, they probably sponsor visas, right? There's no way that they have 10 people that all had green cards. I mean, it's possible, but very less likely. Again, LORs, some will say minimum of 3, some will say minimum of 4. Generally, there's people that have different opinions on this. I recommend if you have 4, send all 4. Even if it says minimum of 3, right? Or even if it says 3 LORs in their requirements list. I sent 4 to all of my programs. So, and then the MSPE and deans that are, make sure you like I said earlier, make sure you're requesting it ahead of time, especially if your program does not, or your school does not participate in the ECFMG portal. The scores are automatically released from ECFMG. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, the scores also, so the cutoffs, that's another thing that I would recommend you either asking current residents or inquiring about. If a program has a score cutoff, it could be incorrect. So I'll give you an example. I was in an open house early in this past cycle where the program had a score cutoff. I can't remember what it was, but there was a score cutoff on their website. And I asked the program director in the open house, I noticed that there's a score cutoff on your website. Is this something you guys abide by? And she immediately was like, oh my God, no, that shouldn't be there. We don't do that anymore. So a lot of programs now are moving away from score cutoffs and they're going to a more holistic review, which is one of the reasons why step 1 was actually pass fail now, right? So like I said, inquire if you're unsure. And then your criteria. So your criteria is also important. I know as IMGs, we tend to like, oh my God, I need to apply broadly. Let me apply everywhere. There's still criteria. A lot of the upper West Coast programs are not IMG friendly at all. Why are you spending your money, right? So make sure you do your own research. Your personal connections go a long way. I'm a big advocate of attending conferences and networking at conferences. I found a lot of success. I did get interviews through my visits at conferences, through my connections that I made there. If someone is familiar with you, they know you in person, they see you interact with other people, interact with them, how you behave, how your demeanor is. That goes a long way. That means a lot. I also met people at conferences that helped me with my application free of charge, people that are faculty at programs. So you can make a lot of valuable connections at these conferences. I would highly recommend, even if you're not presenting, it's a good place to go. Wear a suit, have your business card, have your CV ready, and show up and just talk to people. You might never know who you might run into. I tell this story all the time. I tell it to people. I think I've mentioned it in the groups as well. I met a random lady that I started talking to at one of the conferences, and it turned out that her husband had just recently taken a job as an APD at a brand new program. Like I didn't know who she was. She wasn't even in the world of psychiatry. She was just someone's spouse. And I made a connection that way, and I was able to talk to an APD. Just wouldn't have happened if I didn't talk to her. Wouldn't have happened if I hadn't shown up to that conference. Don't go into debt to go into a conference, but if you can afford to, and if it's nearby and you can do it, go ahead, I think. Hospital versus community, that's another thing you should consider. If you have a lot of research on your CV, a lot of research experience, you might be a good candidate for a university-based program. If you don't, you might be a better candidate for community-based program. It also depends on where you want to practice later in life, on where what your criteria would be. Same with primary care versus fellowship. Based on that, you would apply to where you want to apply, and your program list will be catered to your specific needs. So some programs prefer a wholesome approach, which is i.e. the holistic review. I keep mentioning this, but like, for example, psych is one of those specialties in general that do that. Programs will have their listed on their website if they do holistic review or not. Keep in mind that in terms of the rules and regulations, technically everybody should be using a holistic review. But if there is 2,000 people applying, it's really hard to read 2,000 applications. So, okay, prior match applicants. So we mentioned this earlier. There's some things that'll get imported. I would encourage you to reach out to your LOR writers and try to have them to re-upload with a new date. Again, this is not a deal breaker, but if your LOR writer had written your LOR like 3 years ago and you're applying now, that could be a bad look. But yeah, and again, there's a direct link here for more guidance as well as what gets imported to your following cycle and what doesn't. Any questions on this before we move on? I believe this is actually not my section, so.
Yes, we will let Dr. Chaudhry have a break. But if you have any questions on anything that he just talked about, please go ahead and use the reactions emoji to speak now, or else we'll just move forward.
And I'm sorry for going over time. I just wanted to make sure I covered everything I could.
No, you definitely did not go over time. Guys, I'm sure you're aware of this. This information is not always available in this manner. I don't know about Dr. Chaudhry and Dr. Faruqi. I had zero guidance when I was starting, absolute zero. I didn't even know how to buy a token. So we put all this together so that you are certainly not as lost as we were.
One of the reasons why I'm doing this is because nobody helped me and I want to pay it forward.
All right, so we will take that as no question then.
Yeah. Hi.
Hello.
If I can, sorry to interrupt you. Hi, Dr. Chaudhry, and hi, Dr. Farooq, and hi, Dr. Fayaz. Thanks for giving this opportunity. So, this is with respect to the location that Dr. Chaudhry was expressing about. So the MyRAS application clearly gives us a chance to put forth our preferences with the location, but would it bias the other programs which are out of this location in assessing us, because it might give them an impression that this particular candidate already has preference over a particular location, and would it affect our interview chances in locations out of our preferences? This is I guess I can give you a gap for the second question. Yeah, please.
So
Thank you.
this is a great point that you bring up. I should have mentioned this earlier. So yes, in short, yes. It will limit your interviews, I think personally. So I think it should be used as just the tool that it is. I think it should be used in that manner. It's designed for you to have to tell a certain region, like, listen, I don't want to leave this region. So use it as that. If you feel very strongly about living in the Northeast and you do not want to leave the Northeast at any cost, then put that as your preference, right? But if you're open to interviewing anywhere and ending up anywhere, then make that your preference. So I think it should be used the way it's designed to be used. As like you said, as IMGs, we're kind of, we tend to apply broadly, but that's because we're willing to move to those areas, right? I'm moving halfway across the country for my residency. And I did not put any location preference in my supplemental application because I knew inside that I would be okay with that if I had to move, right? So it's really up to you. If you have a lot of family or a lot of, like, maybe your spouse has a job and you can't leave it or something like that, everyone has their own circumstances, then use that tool.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dr. Chowdhury, over that. There's another question, please don't mind. Well, it's with respect to the USC. As an IMG, being graduated and having a certain gap, and then when you reach out for the clinical experience, we are often put out in two places. One is being an extern or being an observer. And being an observer always is better at an university hospital or with an inpatient setting. But when we really see that, it's never really something that you're going to be doing hands-on. It's more like you're observing things, and the LOR that's put forth for you also clearly mentions that you have been only observing. But when you have an LOR from extern, most likely a clinic, but luckily few people end up with an inpatient as well. But those clearly tell us that we had been exposed to hands-on, and we could take up decisions which helped us predict our chances of assessing the patient in a better way in the future. So would it be better to prefer our LORs from being a university one, or an LOR with a hospital letterhead but being an extern? Would it help us in either way during the interviews? Thanks for
So this whole debate, I have very strong opinions about, because I don't think it matters where your letterhead is from, unless you're applying to Harvard and your letterhead has Harvard on it. If you're applying to an Ivy League program and your letterhead is from Ivy League, that's going to matter. But a lot of places are not going to care about that. Like out of my letters, I had letters from university programs, I had letters from residency programs, I had letters from clinics, I had letters from tiny community programs. So I had a big variety of letters. The one letter that I was always asked about was from a clinic. Like literally, I think there was only 2 or 3 programs that didn't ask me, but every other program specifically singled out this one letter that I had, and it was from a clinic psychiatrist here in Houston with no affiliation to any program. And that was because the quality of the letter was top notch. It was amazing. He made me sound like a superstar, and I spent a long time with him. I spent many months with him. I, developed a relationship with him, a mentor-mentee relationship, and it was very like an enriching experience that I was able to even talk about in my interviews. So I don't think people should get caught up on letterhead or the site of the place or whatever. If the letter is good quality, speaks to your personal academic clinical aptitude, that's going to stand out way more than any other letterhead or whatever. On top of that, I have a personal beef with some of these universities that are charging like $5,000 for a generic, just like paragraph that they write to everybody. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't show anything about you. It's a total waste of money, in my opinion. But I think if you have one of those waste of money letters, have another one that you can have at a clinic that can speak to your personal qualities as well. A lot of these letters, a lot of these readers or reviewers, they're reading your letters not just to see, okay, this was hands-on, or okay, this was at a resident. They're not seeing that. They're also trying to see, does this person vouch for you on a personal level? Not just on an academic or a clinical level, but on a personal level. Are they saying things like, he was helpful to other externs or students, stuff like that? Was Prashant, was he always on time? Things like that, like team player, these things that they mention are also equally as important as the actual clinical work that you did there.
True.
But like you said, if the letter is mentioning that you had clinical decision making where you had influence in the assessment of the patient, that's going to go a lot more. And I can almost guarantee you that no generic university is going to write that about you on their letter for a liability purpose. That's one of the biggest reasons why they won't.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, doctor, for clearing that out. And thanks a lot for this opportunity.
No problem. Good luck.
We'll take one more question from Hamza, and then we will move forward from there. Go ahead, please.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Hamza, and my question is kind of similar. So I'm a non-US IMG, and one of the limiting factors for us is the money. So I've heard that the electives that are offered by community compared to the hospitals and compared to the universities are cheaper. Then why is it that one would prefer to go for these expensive electives offered by the universities as compared to the clinics?
I think it's a name thing. It's a prestige thing. A lot of these big name university programs will offer these rotations just because of their name, and people will go into it for that purpose. It all depends on where you're trying to cater your application to. If you have a lot of research experience, you're trying to go for these big name programs that do accept IMGs, some of them, then you want these big name letters in your application, right? But if you're going for a community family medicine program, I don't see a point in going to these big name programs to get your letters from them.
All right. So if I plan on going for internal medicine in the future, and instead of going for the university programs, if I go for one university sponsor program and then the rest of them from a clinical program, would I be fine in future?
I think that's a good strategy. That's the strategy that I used. I guess I'll tell you guys what I had. So I had 2 letters from a kind of relatively big name residency program. I had 1 letter from a smaller community-based residency program. And then I had 3 letters from clinics, private clinics. One of them was affiliated with the program, but the rest of the two were not. And the way I assigned my letters to different programs was based on that program. So if I'm applying, because I applied to a very type of program, the programs that I applied to that were community-based, I sent my community-focused letters to them. My university-based, I sent them my university, big name, whatever letters. But like I said in the earlier question that was asked, there was only one LOR that was very asked about for me, and that was a clinic-based LOR. And even the big, some of the big university programs that I had interviews at, they asked me about that letter. So it just goes to show that the quality of the letter means more than the letterhead or where you did it.
One distinction we
All
can
right,
make
thank you
on
very
that-
much.
One distinction we can make on that is when you upload your letter, there is a little tiny check mark if your letter writer is a program chair, a program director, or it was part of like a committee. So the committee part is not as much relevant, but one of my letter writers was a program chair in the specialty that I applied in. So anytime my letter went anywhere to any program, it had a little PC next to it. So if you are going to rotate at a university or a clinic, I rotated at his clinic. It just so happened that he was a program chair. It worked out for me in that way. So you could also look for that. It would only help you. It's not like if you don't have it, it would hurt you. So something to also consider.
All right, thank you very much.
And I think we have exhausted Dr. Chaudhry quite a bit, especially since he's fasting and doing all of this. So we will now.
Dr. Faruqi, it's all you. Should I? You want to share the screen?
Yeah, I will share my screen.
Okay, all yours.
All right, here we go. Program signaling. Oh, let me see. I always like to have a very interactive session. I want to hear more from you guys. So I'll try to break this down into as simple form as possible. So what do you mean by program signaling? So it depends on your specialty. In your supplemental application, you get the chance to signal the program. Now, what I mean by that is, let me give you an example. Let me give you an analogy, basically. So let's say you're using a dating app and you're swiping right. And you're just swiping right on different programs. This is the programs you select, swipe right, right, right. But then you get limited super likes. So when you're using super likes, you, depending on your specialty, let's say internal medicine, you have 7 of them. So one super like, this program, there you go. Another one, there you go. Now you have used all your 7 super likes. That's actually you're signaling your program. You're standing out. You're trying to increase your chances of getting an interview there. You're trying to increase your chances of getting noticed over there. So how do you signal a program, and like what strategy did I use? So out of the 7 options which I got, so I was like one program I should choose. Maybe this is my dream program. This is where I really want to be. I know it might be a bit out of my league, but let me just try. Let me try to increase my chances. And the other ones were, in fact, like I'll see the program, as Dr. Chaudhry so thoroughly explained. You have to keep on researching the program. I see which programs were a good fit for me, which programs were IMG friendly. I'm a non-US IMG, by the way. So I filtered out those programs. Then I shortlisted 6 of those programs, and then like, all right, I'm gonna signal these programs this way so that I can maximize my chances of getting noticed and getting an interview in these programs. Also, you could use other things, like maybe you want to, let's say you really want to be in a program in the Northeast because that's your place. Or let's say you're in California and you do not want to move out of California. So you can signal those programs in California. So this is how program signaling works. You get these limited signals, which you should very wisely use. Also, there are some changes. Now, specialties have until early February to decide to participate in program signaling for the upcoming season. Let me just go. Yeah, this one for the supplemental application. Dr. Chaudhry already went through which ones, what are the changes. Up to 10 experiences for the supplemental application as well. This is all over there. This is all on different websites. You guys can definitely read this through. Another thing about signaling is as I said, you need to be very wise about which ones do you use. Let's say you rotated at a place, you have good connections in that place, you could definitely use that to signal as well. There's divided opinion on that. Dr. Fayaz, what do you recommend? Should you signal a program where you've already rotated, where you have connections, or you signal a program, let's say it's a different program because you already know the program where you rotated at, you might have a good chance of getting an interview, and you want to maximize chances elsewhere. So this depends on candidate to candidate. Dr. Fayaz, what's your take on that?
For that one, I would certainly say if you've rotated somewhere, first, let me backtrack. You have to tell them I'm interested in you guys. So you keep on sending those signals. We'll go ahead and go with Dr. Faruqi's wonderful analogy of a dating app. You have to not send subtle signs. You have to send very obvious signs that I want to rotate here. When they know that, I'm someone who is straightforward. So I would say I'm going to signal you, and that because I'm interested in you. And then you give the details of why. So my personal opinion would be first tell them you're interested, show up on time, give them all the indication, and then tell them you're going to signal, and then the signal. Maximize your chances that way.
So this is a wonderful chance to maximize your chances, as Dr. Fayaz clearly said. I personally think, well, it didn't work out for me. All the programs which I signaled, all right, I never heard back from them. All right, one of them did actually get in touch with me, but yeah, it didn't work out. So moving on was graduation and ECFMG certification. So your ECFMG certificate, that's really important. As Dr. Chaudhary mentioned, try to get ECFMG certified before, September 27th, because that's the deadline day. That's the first deadline day. You have to submit your application for at 9 a.m. Eastern time on September 27th. So plan well in advance. There are many pathways for ECFMG certification. You can visit the ECFMG website. You can choose, all right, which pathway applies to you. You can clearly see and read all the rules and regulations. Now, let's say you're pathway 1, you already licensed to practice in a country. That's simply straightforward. So you just apply, you just submit your STEP scores or ET scores, you send it to ECFMG, and then you pay the fee for the ECFMG certificate, and there you go. Your certificate will be issued to you in about 3 to 4 weeks, or sometimes sooner than that. And it's always important to get ECFMG certified as an IMG. Because anyway, you have to be ECFMG certified before you submit your rank order list. So it's better to get it done as soon as possible. You apply via ECFMG via the OASIS portal. I'm sure all of the IMGs are well aware of that. If you want to know if your medical school is part of this world directory of medical schools, here's the link on the slide. You can always click on it. Schools which are in this particular list, if your school is in this list, go ahead, you're eligible to be a part of this whole elaborate process. Welcome to the stressful life.
We're
Right,
here to
medical school
encourage
class.
Dr. Faruqi not to add on to the stress. I'm just kidding.
Medical school transcript and MSPE, I think Dr. Chaudhary did cover this up. I think this was already there somewhere. So I'm just gonna, quickly go through this. So your medical school transcript, you must indicate in MyEras if they themselves would be uploading the medical school transcript, or your medical school will send it to the ECFMG. You could do it both ways. Same goes for the MSP. Either you could upload it or your medical school could send it to the ECFMG. Either is fine. If your medical school does it, it looks a lot better. My medical school just gave me my MSP and told me to upload it myself, and I did it. So it all depends what your medical school wants to do. LORs, oh my God, LORs are extremely important. LORs, as Dr. Fayaz, Dr. Chaudhary mentioned, you need to have really good LORs. Like Dr. Chaudhary got a fantastic LOR from one of the the people whom he rotated with in Houston. So an LOR can be very generic, or it can be very tailored to your specific personality traits. Like a strong LOR is highly recommended. For that, you should always put in the effort. You should always build connections. You should always show that you are passionate about your specialty. You're putting in that work, and therefore you got this brilliant LOR at the end. When you are requesting an LOR from your preceptor or whoever you rotated with, you could send them a personal statement. You could send them your CV. For me, the people who I rotated with, I sort of developed a bond with them over time. And I try to work really hard. I try to show a whole amount of interest in my field, and they were kind enough to write LOR from me. So how do you request a LOR? It's ideally, let's say, you could write them an email, a professional email. As we started off this presentation, how do you write an email? Dear Dr. So-and-so, or hello, Dr. So-and-so. And then you write a nice email, be professional, and then you send it to them. Supposingly, many times what happens is that most of the doctors, physicians, they're really busy. And time's running out. You need your LOR to be uploaded and to be processed by ERAs, and it all takes time. So whenever that is happening, you could always remind your preceptor about the LOR. Again, a formal email with proper professionalism and everything. Anything you want to add over here, Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. Fayaz, before I move ahead?
I'd want to talk about my personal experience. So when I applied, unfortunately, a couple of my letters were coming through. So I applied September 28th, just like the deadline. First of all, it's the deadline, but some people can apply afterwards. It's your personal choice. It's a deadline in a sense that some programs will say, okay, this is September, this date we got from ERAS. We're going to download everybody's application and start working on it. Some programs download, some programs digitally view. So even if you update your document later, the ones who digitally view it can see the updates. The ones who have already downloaded, that's it, they've downloaded it. This is why we encourage that date of September, so that even if your application is simply downloaded, they still have it. Second point, my letter, especially the one from the program chair, came in later. So I submitted on time, but then the very next day, I got the email addresses for all the program coordinators off of Residency Clore and my ERAS. And I sat down and I emailed every single program that I had applied to and told them that my LORs will be coming in later. You'll see when you apply, some programs will say, do not email us. So you don't email them. But some programs will say, thank you for notifying us. Please tell us when they are uploaded and we'll look at your application. So this is to encourage those that in case it happens, it's not end of the world, but do your homework and email. That would be my input.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fayaz. Dr. Chaudhary, you want something to add?
I just want to emphasize, try to be as early as you can to upload your letters.
Yep, I fully agree with that. All right, LOR tips. So, all right, this has happened. Like, you have to make sure the AAMC ID is on the letter. There's proper spelling. Sometimes when ERAS processes your letter and they find any discrepancies, they get in touch with you, and they tell you you have to get in touch with the person who wrote the LOR and request them for a new one. So if there are any discrepancies on your LOR, don't worry, ERAS will get in touch with you and they will inform you, right? All this is very well put forward by Dr. Fayaz on the slide. Make sure you go through it. Make sure you read everything properly. I'll just move on to the very important things. Even uploading LOR, my ERAS, all the steps are there. You go, there's a unique LOR portal in which you can apply, or where you can upload these documents. For example, let's say you don't have to even worry about these things. Like if your preceptor is uploading documents for you, LORs for you, it's fine. It'll show up in your LOR portal. So you don't have to worry about this too much. Components of a strong LOR: evaluation of student strengths, preferably from working directly, evaluation of how the student will perform as a future resident, and qualities that may distinguish student from others. So everyone is a very good candidate because we're all into medicine, we're all doctors, and you've chosen the field of medicine. You are clearly a very, very good candidate. You've chosen this particular residency pathway, the USMLE, the toughest in the world. So you are smart, you are excellent, you're very good. Everyone is. Everyone's LOR will have these adjectives. You need to be exceptional. Your LOR has to be like, if people are at this level, this candidate is at this particular level. One candidate, all candidates are 10 out of 10, but this candidate is 100 out of 10. So your LOR has to be like exceptionally well. It has to be like, it has to make you sound like $100. Oh my God, if I do not, like if I'm a residency program, if I'm a program director and I'm reading this LOR, I should feel like, oh my God, this candidate is excellent. I better not skip this candidate. Like, oh my God, I definitely have to take this candidate. So preferably, like there are different ways of writing LORs. As we have these many examples, you guys can go through this. So it can describe, okay, maybe this candidate has some teaching qualities. He's an excellent teacher. This candidate has excellent patient care, excellent communication. This program was discussed and solved a very nice clinical case with us. So many qualities can be mentioned on the LOR, and not just mentioned, they can be backed by strong examples. Again, so many of these ones. Now, this is a weak letter example. Like this is very generic. Like anyone can write this. Like as Dr. Chaudhary mentioned, there are hospitals which charge like thousands of dollars and they can just give you this. This won't help you. But these LORs, which describe a lot of your qualities in detail, backed by examples, these are the ones which you would be looking for. So get in touch with the hospitals or a clinic, rotate with them, put in the hard work. I'm sorry, there's no substitute for hard work. Put in the effort, get your connections, develop a bond with people, and then get these LORs. Speaking of examples, personal statement is one thing which I feel is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Now, personal statement is something, as the name says, it's personal statement. There are services online, you can pay for them, but I believe the personal statement which you write for yourself, no one can match that because it's your story at the end of the day. There is a full guide on how to write a personal statement. It basically says, do not just tell that I am this, but show it by examples, engage the reader, make me want to read more. Now, how I used to write my personal statement was that I always used to open with a very catchy line and try to create an intrigue. All right, something is happening. I'm just going to pick up on someone. All right, we have someone with the name of Lenovo over here. It's good. So let's say Lenovo wants to write a personal statement and be like, I was once rolling in the deep trying to be Adele. I know if you get that joke, it's good. If you don't, that it's fine as well. So I was rolling in the deep trying to be Adele when something. I'm like, wow, if I'm reading this personal statement and you start with that, I'm intrigued. I want to read more. Why does this Lenovo wants to be Adele suddenly, all of a sudden? And then you read, and then you highlight, then you basically like write, why did you choose medicine? And some other examples, what qualities do you have? What qualities do you bring? Something challenging in your life, something about your journey, some experience which Dr. Chaudhary mentioned when he was mentioning about in one particular section, the experiences which you've had, unfortunately, in this particular in your lifetime. So a lot can go on a personal statement. I personally believe start with a very cool, catchy line, something which grips their attention, because these program directors, these people are reading so many thousands of personal statements. They will get bored reading the same thing again and again. Keep it short, keep it crisp, concise. Let it not exceed 1 page, I would say. I know people differ on this. I know people whose personal statements were like 1.5 pages and all. I personally kept my personal statement for up to 1 page. 1 page of your ERA's preview. That's more than enough. And I avoided long paragraphs, short, small paragraphs, and I gave more examples. So personal statement is extremely important. Write your personal statement and give it to your friend to read, because they know what kind of a person you are. They will be able to understand it better. And write it for yourself, because you will write your own story better. You know what you did in your life. You know what type of person you are. The other person does not know you as well as you know yourself. All right. Anything, Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. Fayaz, you guys want to add here?
Yes, I will certainly go first. Okay,
Mhm.
last year, one of the, I believe, APDs actually came on air and said, guys, if I read the words holistic approach, patient-centered care one more time in a personal statement, I will throw it out. So here it is, guys. We're telling you, as much as you can, please do not use these generic terms. They have been used and abused. How can you say the same thing and how can you say something similar and mean the same? What is holistic approach? That means that you consider something you consider all the aspects, so you can explain that way. What is patient-centered care? Well, in all of my clinical experiences, or in one experience in particular, I greatly enjoyed it because I built a bond with my patient over X. For example, one of my interviewers asked me, tell me about a impactful patient story, or tell me about a time that you made a bond with a patient. And I told them it was related to my multilingual ability. It was not even because it patient-centered care. In my opinion, it was patient-centered because I could speak the patient's language. So please, and we are suggesting, and I'm personally begging you, do not use these in your personal statement or in your interviews when you get there. That will just be my appeal to this group.
All right. Dr. Chaudhary, any inputs from your side?
No, I agree with everything you say. The only thing I would add to this is your personal statement, there's no right or wrong way to do it. I agree that you should start with something catchy, but if you can't come up with something, it's okay. If you have an alternative that's really good, that's fine too. I mean, I started with something catchy myself, but you don't have to do that.
I agree. Just make it engaging in your own way. Just write something down. Just start in one way, that makes you want to read more. Like, I want to read the entire thing. The first paragraph should catch my attention, at least, if not the first line. All right. Personal statement.
We've had a hand raised for a while.
All right.
Hamza, do you still have a question?
Yes. Dr. Hamza, do you have a question for us?
Oh, no, sorry.
All right.
I think that
No
was a
problem.
mistake.
No problem. Professional picture. Dr. Tabby has spoken on this. So a photo file should not exceed these requirements. If you don't want to go to a professional studio to get your photo clicked, you can always get a white bed sheet, hang it in the background, get a DSLR, get an iPhone, and just get a picture clicked. And make sure you meet all these requirements. The guidelines are also here. Could click on the link and it'll take you to the web page. All right, do's and don'ts. Dr. Tabby, do you want to start with the do's and don'ts, or should I go ahead?
Please, you're doing a wonderful job. Go ahead.
All right, let's start with, I'm not a negative person first. I'll start with the positive things, what you should do basically. So as Dr. Chaudhary said, read. You've invested thousands of dollars into this whole process. Know what the rules of the game are. This is a long marathon. It's not a 100-meter dash. Know from start to beginning, these are the rules. This is what I have to do. Read, read, read. Save all the PDFs in one particular folder. You can keep on going back to read them just in case you have a doubt. Make a timeline and checklist. Plan well in advance. This is extremely important. Right now, I'm over here. At my end, it's 2nd of April. I'm sure it's 1st of April over there. So I need to figure out, how do I plan everything in advance? In my mind, I have this flow chart going in straight like this. So it's like, all right, April, I need to give step 1. Okay. And then I go on further. All right, I'll be ready by, let's say, beginning of June or end of May for a CK. And then in June itself, I will give my occupational English test, the OET, and then I'll immediately apply for ECFMG certification. And in the meanwhile, while I'm doing all these things, I'll be doing some clinical rotations, this and that, try to get some nice LORs. And I'll also be researching programs after my OET gets over. And then I'll be shortlisting these programs. I'll be buying that ERAS token. And then I'll start working on my personal statement. I'll start working on my CV. And there you go. I have my timeline in my mind. And when September rolls around, I have all these things ready. I upload all these things in the portal, and then I'm ready to go. And then in September itself, I start my interview preparation. So everyone has a different timeline. You guys know what you have to do. You don't have to compare yourself to, anyone. It's your timeline. It's your life. These are your goals. You need to figure it out. How do you plan? There are some dates which are fixed. You know what the timeline of residency is, what ERAS or ECFMG, AMC rolls around. So September to March. Before that, how do you get ready? You need to plan well in advance. Right now, write it down on a piece of paper. Meet those deadlines. This is really, really important. My father always tells me, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And I've always stuck by that rule. All right, contact programs prior to September using professional CV. This is something, again, Dr. Chaudhary has so clearly emphasized on. Make sure you're showing your interest in these programs where you want to start your residency. Request early and ask preceptor about expectations. So there are some tips on this as well. You need to reach out to your preceptors. You need to know, all right, it's always nice to know what the expectations are. If you do not know what the expectations are, you're not able to maneuver yourself, guide yourself through those things. Templates on personal statement. Again, these are all here on the link. Start working on your personal statement now. I used to have so many drafts of my personal statement because I used to write one thing and then I'd be like, it doesn't sound a bit too nice. Or maybe I'll make my friends read something, and they have to, or not even friends, just make a stranger read this thing. Let's say I don't know, someone's hand is up. Let's say I don't know Dr. Reddy. Dr. Reddy doesn't know me. And I want a good opinion on my personal statement. I just reach out to him and I share my personal statement with him, and he tells me whether this personal statement paints or portrays a nice picture about me or not. So always, always reach out to people, strangers, friends, and make them read your personal statement. Use apps such as Grammarly to write professionally without grammatical errors. Again, as Dr. Chaudhary mentioned, we have to be professional, avoid spelling mistakes, avoid grammatical errors, avoid spacing errors, formatting errors, and all that. Type on a document and save as PDF example. Have a professional qualified friend look at your CV, all right, and then be yourself. I think this is also really important. Be yourself. There are so many YouTube channels, there are so many pages, and even like me, you guys can be looking at me or Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. Fayaz, and be like, all right, let's try to emulate someone. Let's try to do something which the other person is doing. Sure, if that helps you, fine. But then at the end of the day, don't forget to be yourself. You have your own story to tell and sell, and no one can do it better than you. You have your own timeline, and if you be yourself, I believe no one else can beat you. I cannot be Dr. Fayaz. Dr. Fayaz cannot be Dr. Reddy. Dr. Reddy cannot be Dr. Hamza. Dr. Hamza cannot be Dr. Chaudhary. But we're all great individuals in our own selves. So always, always be yourself. Now, coming to the don'ts.
If I may,
don't spend money.
One moment.
Yes, please
I
go ahead, Dr. Fayaz.
Dr. Faruqi, I know with the highlight on, it's hard to see who's speaking. If you guys are wondering, okay, where do I go to find people to look at my CV? Where do I go to look at my PS? If you're kind of the only person from your school, things like that. This is why you come to our WhatsApp platform that is absolutely free. And I will say, we have had a wonderful experience with the applicants there. Right now, the groups are a little quiet. There's less chatter because we're not in main residency season. We have already gone through a whole application season, so we know how crazy it gets. Guys, start building a bond with those people now. I made everybody do an introduction a few weeks ago, so I'm not going to torture them with that again. But if you're in the groups, if you don't have the information, I'll add you to the group. And just, we have groups for every single specialty. So if you feel like somebody's posting something and it's like in the same area as you're trying to improve, build a bond with them and then share this personal information. However, be cautious. Have a relationship with somebody, know their mannerisms, and then send your statements. For example, you send your personal statement that's extremely well written to somebody. They copy paste it, and then they make it their own. You both apply to the same program. Their application sees it's seen before yours. And now they get the credit for that amazing story that was actually yours. So in that manner, you do have to be careful who you send it to. But if you want to hang out with like-minded people, just let me know and I will add you to the groups. Thank you for letting me add that, Dr. Faruqi.
No problem, Dr. Fayaz. All right, don'ts. We've mentioned all these don'ts throughout our presentation, but I'll just go over them quickly. Do not spend money for publicly available information. You can search for all those programs using FRIDA, Residency Explorer. These are all free. Any other publicly available information, do not pay, save your money. This is already a very expensive affair. Do not wait until July to work on your application. Dr. Chaudhary clearly mentioned you got to start now. At least start making a timeline. Start reaching out to programs. Do not wait to engage with programs till the very last minute, because thousands of other people would be doing the same thing and you want to get an early start. The early bird always catches the worm. Do not wait till the end of the rotation to request an LOR. Do not have someone else write your personal statement, because as I mentioned, it's your story at the end of the day. And just to reiterate, as Dr. Fayaz said, share it with people who you trust. Make sure no one copies your personal statement as well. Do not share personal statement with strangers on chat groups. Again, make sure the person is trustworthy at least. Don't send ERA's CV for observerships. Don't submit ERA's CV details without proofreading. Guys, this is very important. I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, I made a mistake in my ERA's CV. I did not get the time to read because the deadline date was so near. I submitted my CV like right at 8 a.m. Eastern time, and the deadline was at 9 a.m. Eastern time the very same day, and I made some mistakes. Start well in advance and make sure you proofread. Make sure there are no errors. Make sure you're not contradicting yourself anywhere in your title and in your descriptions, because people have made those mistakes. Do not practice an answer and then regurgitate it in an interview. Guys, this is also extremely important. At Resi, I know Dr. Fayaz will again, I think, mention this. When we're doing our mock interviews, when you're all practicing with each other, or when you're doing dedicated mock sessions with either Dr. Fayaz, Dr. Chaudhary, or Dr. Me, we do have templates for answers, but sticking to that template, rote learning, is not something we recommend. You always have to be yourself. You always have to, the interview should come across as a conversation. You're talking to the other person. You cannot be like, oh, tell me something about yourself. And then you'll be like, I'm this, la, 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 and it ends. No, everyone is following the same template. How do you stand out then? And even the program directors, your interviewers know that, all right, this person has clearly rehearsed this answer many times. They know what they're trying to say. Like, you have to be original. Just be yourself. Whatever they're asking you, talk to them normally as if you're having a conversation. And trust me, you will be doing fine. Because if you're learning all these answers and then these interviewers are highly experienced and they ask you a trick question or a question just framed a different way, they'll clearly know if you hesitate or you're fumbling or you're unable to answer them. So make sure just be yourself, relax. And once you start practicing on our platform, either during those free interviews with different people or in our one-on-one dedicated sessions, you'll clearly settle down and you'll clearly be more comfortable talking to strangers, which is really helpful when it comes to interviews. All right. So these are the do's and don'ts.
On that note,
Yes,
Dr. Faruqi, could you take us to two more slides down where we have our group mock information? One more. Oops. Further
I
up,
think that
further up from, I'm not sure. I think this is a different, we clicked on the, go back to the original Journey to USMLE. We opened the interview tips presentation. We'll go back to the USMLE one.
all right. I'll just go there. Just a minute, guys. Sorry about that.
No worries. So I'm glad everybody actually saw that slide. We have two presentations. The first one that we used today, it has everything about how to apply. And the second one has interview tips that's built into the first one. So you can access both in the same presentation. While Dr. Faruqi is pulling that one up, here we are. Here's everybody's beautiful, gorgeous smiley faces. So this is how we do the group mocks. Everybody comes onto the main screen and we discuss one question, and then we'll kind of, it's an icebreaker. It's nice to talk to different people. And then you're sorted into different breakout rooms. So it's 3 to 4 people per room. That way you can finish off in a couple of hours. We will start this back up in September. So obviously when it's time for you to start interviewing, and these are absolutely free. The whole schedule goes up. This is something that's scheduled. This is something that you can also reschedule if you need to. So we try to keep it as easy to follow as possible, also as technology savvy as possible. With that, we also were recommended by Inside the Match last cycle. If you guys are not aware of that, Inside the Match does wonderful things for IMGs, all medical graduates applying for residency, and it's absolutely free. So our free group mocks were recommended by them as well. So you know that we're trying to do quality service. With that being said, now we open the floor to questions, and we'll be sticking around for about 10, 15 more minutes. And then we'll certainly see you in future sessions. So with that, if anybody has questions, please turn your mic on and let's just have a discussion with each other.
Hi, thanks again for letting me ask another question. So it's with respect to the personal statement that you're talking about, Dr. Faruqi. So normally the personal statement always highlights the good things about you. It tells you who you are cut out to be. So there might be few red flags through our academic career where we might have hit the dips, and we try to regroup ourselves and come back with a stronger motive. So is it good to highlight this kind of things in your personal statement, or would it be recommended to only talk about it during the interviews as such?
So if you have red flags, like let's say you have low scores, you could address that on your personal statement. Maybe you went through a rough phase in your life because of which you had these low scores, or maybe if you're not able to get proper US clinical experience or anything, you have your year of graduation is more than 5 years. So you can definitely address that on your personal statement. What's your take on that, Dr. Fayaz, Dr. Chaudhary? Because I would certainly address those things because they're even brought up. I addressed my red flags, in fact, on my personal statement.
Okay.
I think it depends on what the red flag is. If your red flag was during medical school, I would not bring that up. But if it's related to, like, if you had a failed attempt on a step exam, or if you had a gap in training or gap after graduation, or if it's related to the process of residency application, I would address it. If you failed a course during medical school and you had to retake that course, I would not mention that, for example.
Yeah, that
I have a question relating to that. Would you also say that working in the NHS and writing the exam is like a red flag?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Like, would you also say that, okay, because sometimes maybe your scores might not be like so high, and concerning the personal statement and writing why you didn't have like very good scores, would you also say that working in the NHS, like NHS in the UK, like in their health sector, working in the NHS and writing the USMLE exams, could that also be a reason why you did not score so well?
So I would not recommend saying that you had a job and that's why your scores were low. That's not,
Okay.
that sounds like a cop-out kind of. I mean, it sounds like a really hard time in reality, but if you mention it to a program, it comes off as, let me tell you what it comes off as. Mostly programs, they expect you to be able to write exams while having a life.
Okay.
Why? Because they hold AMGs to that standard. AMGs take a month to write step 1 or 6 weeks or whatever it is, right? So if we tell them that, hey, we had to do this job and I took 3 months and I couldn't do it, they're going to say, well, we have 10 other people that can do it in a month while being in medical school. So they wouldn't consider you, you know what I'm saying? So I would not recommend that as being a reason. Now, a lot of people, I don't know if this is the case for you, but a lot of people, they consider their scores to be low, even though they're not low. Like I had multiple people message me and say, I'm applying family medicine. My step 1 is 231. Oh my God, what am I gonna do? I was like, what? Like, look at the NRMP's matched applicants average score. If your score is way below average, the matched applicant, then you're low for that specialty. So for example, a 231 for family medicine is stellar, but a 231 for anesthesia is below average, right? So it depends on what specialty you're applying to. Really take a critical look at your scores. A lot of times it's not worth mentioning your score. I know somebody personally who had a really, really low step 1 score, like a barely pass, and they had a really good step 2 score. And, you know, they didn't mention their step 1 score anywhere. It was never brought up in any of their interviews at all. So if they had brought it up, it now looks like an insecurity, right? So I don't want to make a comment on your specific situation, and I don't want you to announce your situation here in public forum, but I would encourage you to reach out to one of us personally and to get an opinion, but also you should compare your scores to what the NRMP average matched applicant in your specialty is, and then make a judgment on whether it's low or high.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Dr. Fayaz, you wanted to say something and I cut you off. Sorry.
I believe I did, but I will excuse myself because I am also fasting and I think my mind is just very mushy
Right.
right now.
We have another hand raised. Dr. Rami has his hand raised. Yes, Dr. Rami, go ahead.
Yes, hi all. Thank you for this amazing lecture that you guys gave. So I have a question. So you can have a perfect CV, you know, with a lot of publications and many things. But if you have one red flag, like you have a very old year of graduation or you have an attempt or whatever, then, you know, they won't see your CV. They won't know who you are. They won't know you there. And it's very hard at the same time, you know, to reach every program and tell them that you are interested, and they might even not look to your email. So is there a specific approach that you guys would recommend in these situations? Because I think many people, they have either old year of graduation or they have you know, attempts or have this filtration, you know, when they can go through filtration and they will be filtered out. So if you guys have any approach for this situation. Thank you.
So firstly, you should research the programs very well when you're applying. If you know the program has a very strict cutoff for, let's say, year of graduation, not more than 5 years, and you know they're very strict about it, I would suggest not to apply in such programs. Also, if you're an older graduate, go for step 3, get it out of the way. As an IMG, if you're given step 3, it really boosts your chances. Get more US clinical experience. It helps you build connections. The more connections you have, the more it helps you out in the future. If you have like more red flags, like multiple attempts or this and that, try to address it on your personal statement. Try to show how you've gained from there, how your scores have improved. For example, multiple attempts on step 1, but then you have a stellar score on your CK, and then you have a good score or even better score on your step 3. So this clearly shows that you are a candidate who is willing to learn, who has improved with time, and that you are a good fit for any residency program. So this would be my suggestion. Do not apply to programs where you know they're gonna like filter you out. There are many programs which accept people with multiple attempts, people who are older graduates as well, more than 5 years. So do your research very well, more US clinical experience, get step 3 done and dusted, build more connections. And yes, that would be my advice. Anything Dr. Fayaz, Dr. Chaudhary want to add?
What I would
I think you have to look at the whole application. You
Mm.
could, you know, I know many people that have really old year of grads, like pre-2010, that match this cycle. It all depends on what the rest of your application looks like, basically. I'm sorry again, Dr. Fayaz, go ahead.
No, you're absolutely fine. One thing that kind of started last season was Twitter Spaces. So if you could go to the specialty of your choice, and you don't need to have a super fancy Twitter account, zero presence, just create a Twitter file, follow these agencies. And if you're asking what agencies, you just go back to the same presentation we just we just presented on, go to the top of the slides, and it talks about which people to follow. Inside the match, there's the IMG journey, some other things. They will regularly hold Twitter Spaces. And one tip that a PD gave last year was to regularly show up to these spaces. People will start recognizing your name, and you start asking good questions. Obviously, do your research. We're all intellectual, smart people. So that's one easy way to sit at home and just increase your recognition. Outside of that, obviously the emails, if you have any programs that are driving distance, then you reach out to them. Yeah, those are some tips that I would recommend.
Any more questions? This is your chance, guys.
While we are thinking of questions, let me briefly talk about how the rest of the cycle is kind of going to go. If you're not on the Instagram page, highly recommend you get on there, because it is so amazing that you can set timers. I forget things right and left. So if we have a session, you can just set a reminder, and it'll give you a reminder a day before or like a couple hours before, so you can decide if you want to come. Number 2, since we're all starting residency, we're going to be very busy in the summerish area. So before that, I'm trying to, all of us as a team are trying to put out as many sessions as we can. We're going to start a new series that's going to talk about how to increase your chances, but in each specialty: general surgery, internal medicine, family medicine. So all of that information will also go on the Instagram page. Did I forget psychiatry? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Dr. Chaudhary obviously has a soft spot for psychiatry. So if you cannot make it to any of those sessions, as always, they will go on our Google Drive and then also onto our YouTube page. If you don't know how to find any of this information, just go to Instagram. It has all the links right there, or you're welcome to send me a message anytime. So with that, I hope we tried to cover as many questions as we could. If you guys still have any leftover questions, please let us know. I will drop my number here because this is the number where all the groups are set up. So if you think of something later, just let us know. And thank you so much for joining us today, guys. I think it will be a wrap from here.
Thank you, guys.
Right. Thank you, guys. Hope you all have a wonderful day.
And Dr. Farooqi and Dr. Chaudhary, I'm going to put us in a breakout room very quickly.
All right.